Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychology and Spirituality, a bridge to better life discussion. During our weekly episodes, we explore the intersection of spirituality and psychology, and as a result, capture timeless wisdom contained in both fields. Hi, my name is Marcia Trajano, and I'm excited to have Jussara Korngold, the program founder and co-host, with me today. Hi, Jussara, how are you doing?
Hello, Marcy. I'm doing great, and I'm really, again, very excited for this new journey. It's always so exciting every podcast that we make, and we prepare ourselves and knowing that there will be listeners with us. It's always so exciting. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I would like to invite Josara here with me to work, right? Maybe I can I put my hands here because I feel like we're massaging like a piece of bread, like the dough. We're massaging with thoughts on the mysteries of the human mind and soul. And I invite you, Josara, for all of us here together, understand a little bit more about the profound connection between psychological growth and spiritual evolution. So, Josara, let's go back to the beginning. Is that okay? Let's
Yeah.
go back to a story that we all know, yet few of us truly understand from the angle that I would like to explore with you today. Let's talk about the story of Adam and Eve. So here it goes, everyone. In the beginning, there was the Garden of Eden, an untouched paradise where everything existed in perfect harmony. Adam and Eve, the first humans in this story, lived without awareness of their individuality, and they existed as one with the divine, right? So there's a sense of closeness and one connection. So as they lived with the divine in the Garden of Eden, they also were free of suffering and conflicts. There was no knowledge for them of good and evil, no sense of separation, only a sense of unity, of oneness. And that sense was also with the world and with each other. I would say it was a time of innocence. But interesting enough, within his story, everything changed with a single act, the forbidden fruit. When Eve took the fruit and she just shared it with Adam, at that moment their eyes were open and they saw themselves for the first time no longer as divine beings, but as, and it's us, right? As you said, as vulnerable, imperfect creatures. The knowledge of their nakedness flooded them with shame, and the paradise that once sheltered them was lost. So the expulsion from Eden, and this is an important topic that I would like to perhaps we can talk later, but that expulsion was not a punishment, but something, right? There was the beginning of something much greater and quite beautiful because it is the symbol of the awakening of our consciousness. So it was the start of a journey that we are all going through the same, the journey towards self awareness, individuation, and true understanding. So, if we think about Josiah, while Adam and Eve in the story were no longer in perfect unity or synchronicity, or this tangled in their self concept with the divine, they were now separated. They were, because of that sense of being separated, they were forced to navigate the complexities of life, which includes, and we talked about it before, right? It includes suffering, includes joy, but also includes a sense of loss. At the same time, that includes the sense of discovery. So I would like for us to perhaps explore how this myth of Adam and Eve serves as an archetype for the journey of the self. So just as they left the safety of Eden to discover their true nature, we too, right, Josada, we must leave behind our unconscious unity with the divine and really start a new journey, a new path toward self discovery. So it is through most important learning from this story for me is through this journey, which includes struggle, suffering, and transformation, that we get to know ourselves and ultimately return to this deeper, more conscious connection with the divine. So, Josada, what are your thoughts? I had some questions just thinking about it that come to mind, and maybe we can think about it as maybe some of the thoughts that we can talk about it. Right? For example, how does the story of Adam and Eve mirror our own psychological journey, and how does it also uncover those lessons hidden with the myth that is quite old, right? How could their expulsion from paradise illuminate our own process of individuation and our own spiritual evolution? What do you think the story, this is for me, for you, Josan, and for everyone here, but what does the story teach us about overcoming our own shadow and reuniting with our higher self? What are your thoughts?
Okay, Marcia. First of all, I would like to explain to everyone, to clarify that
Mhm.
we are going to be analyzing the myth, the story, through one angle. There are so many angles to look at the story, and so religions are going to present their angle, philosophy, psychology, and we are going to be analyzing this. So it's just one of the one of the aspects, one of the views that we are going to present. Of course, completely in tune to what we are talking about, to what our podcast is all about, psychology and spirituality. So we are going to be touching on the spiritual aspects, the growth of the spirit, for instance, and of course how this manifests in terms of this inner journey and the mind, the self, the ego, the shadow, all of those things. So it's just one interpretation, and it's so amazing because this is what we can do with those myths and parables and everything. The more you look at them, the more it's like you have a kaleidoscope behind
Yes.
you. I mean, you move just a little bit and it changes the formats and colors completely. So this is it, and this I think is those teachings that stay with us for eternity, I would say. I don't know,
Yes.
because we are always learning from them. So in this case, the Garden of Eden, as we can and Adam and Eve, so we can connect that, spiritually speaking, to the moment where we are talking about the creation. Of course, in terms of spirituality, we do believe in a creator. We do believe that there was the start, the um the starting point of all of this, where we as spirits started popping out of the,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, well, I don't know the process. Okay,
Uh,
we
it,
don't know the process, right?
many people call it the breath of God, right? Which I find it quite poetic. The
Yeah,
breath of God that with its each breath there is creation.
right. And then but at the beginning we do not come out with that unity, that conscious state that will really help us to understand who we are.
Mhm.
Maybe we could think about the period of a fetus during a
Yes.
gestation, right? I
Yes.
mean, you don't know exactly what you are, what you will become, and what your potential, your
Hmm.
latent powers, right? So we are in this situation, we are in this transition, that it comes to a point that very much like the birth, we can make a connection here with Adam and Eve. Now it's time for you to leave paradise.
Hmm.
You are living inside of a sheltered, sheltered by all the protection, no responsibilities, no uh,
Hmm.
clarity of what was going on. But it comes a moment that you have to take the first breath for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
even the sense of innocence, right? Because the baby, even after the period of gestation, as you mentioned, and birth, it's that state of complete innocence that to me, Adam and Eve represents
mhm,
before their awareness of, or what they call the nakedness, right? When they become aware of who they are. And
mhm,
the child, I think it's about 2 years old, when the child no longer sees herself, himself as mom, right? As one unit with the mother. And then there's this beginning of the sense of their ego and their own personality. That's what I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts?
yeah, and that's the process that we can see here
Mm-hmm.
depicted on the story or the myth of Adam and Eve, where
Mm-hmm.
we're living completely unaware with no
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, and everything was provided to them. They had access to everything, and come on, we would call that paradise, right?
Yes, I would.
You provide everything to me. I have no worries in this world. But it comes a point that you have. This is the reason why we were created to develop, to grow, to go through the path that Carl Jung's will call the path to individuation, and
Mm-hmm.
that birth, that supposed expelling from paradise
Mm-hmm.
means finding out about myself. And it's when there is, this split between ego and self, and we start taking note of that, or perceiving that we have, those different sides and different interests that comes to mind at first. And of course, very much like the child, it's the ego prevailing at the beginning, because
Mm-hmm.
I want things that I think that I need to survive. I'm not worried about the maturity of spirit per se. In
Yeah,
spiritual terms, we could also say that um, I mean, that could be the famous missing link
yeah,
that we have when we go, like in spiritism, we do believe that after the creation we go through the phases of vegetable, mineral, animal, until we reach the hominid, hominal stage. And
mm-hmm.
this is when, let's say, the expelling, the growth.
Yes,
Now
yeah,
you have free will. you know,
yes.
you have to be responsible for your actions actually begin, which we see portrayed very much in the story of Adam and Eve. I don't know if you
And
want.
to me, yeah, and to me, there's something interesting that you bring here, Jussara, which is the expulsion, if you will, from paradise. Really is a symbol of this, the birth, right? The process, but it's really the awakening, right? From that point, our consciousness is awakened, but very early, just like Adam and Eve. Uh, in that moment of expulsion where they to me are lost, they're feeling so many conflicting emotions, including shame, etc., but from us, this awakening of consciousness, where perhaps we move from complete and strong unity, but unconscious, right? So we're one with the divine, but we're unconscious of ourselves. And as we separate, we start to move toward, look at me, right? The whole nakedness of Adam and Eve. Oh, I am naked. So this idea of, and I'm looking myself here, right, of self-awareness, and it starts that process that is quite complex if we think about it. And if we think about Joanna de Angelis, she brings across her body of work uh, this idea that we are here in this trajectory to expand our consciousness, which goes hand in hand with the story today, right? We are awakened toward this, we are self aware, but we need not only become self aware, but we need to grow and expand in that awareness, in that consciousness.
As a spiritist, we are always
Mhm.
talking from the perspective of reincarnation. Right.
Correct.
But we don't even use reincarnation for, to understand that just during one lifetime,
Mhm.
I do believe that we go through this process of, feeling expelled many times.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe when the baby still has months, only some months. When it reached like 11 months, close to a year,
Mhm.
there we are waiting anxiously for them to start walking.
Mhm.
Maybe in their minds they're thinking, I'm very comfortable the way I am. Why do I have to struggle and start exercising? It's hard to walk and to start having a different panorama around me. So now everything is raised, and my universe was up to, I don't know, a few inches. Now I have to have a spatial knowledge or understanding of a different surrounding. So we never think actually about all that.
Mhm.
But we know that these are the steps that are necessary. Then
Yep.
goes other phase. We go through other phases, and we go to the phase where you're no longer going to stay sheltered at home. It's time for you to start going to school and
Mhm.
kindergarten. And I mean, I'm comfortable here. I don't want it to go there. I don't want it perhaps to have to have relationship with other
Yes. Yes.
people like me. And then it comes the phase where you go through your senior years, and you have to think about college, and then you have to think about now I'm graduated, and now I have to think about work, and then I have to think about having a relationship, marrying, having children. So we are constantly being expelled from
Exactly.
comfortable positions that we acquire, but always with a name of progressing, of
Yes.
experiencing new things, of being capable. Like you said,
Yeah.
sometimes it comes through so many different conflicting emotions, right? Because I know that I have to do that, but I don't want to talk, I don't want to walk, I don't want to go to college, or all
Yeah.
those things that you think we think that we know better. I don't want to learn how to read and write, but then when you learn to read and write and say, oh my God,
The
uh,
horizon just opens, right?
yeah,
It's
right.
just an amazing thing. And quite frankly, just that I don't know if you can think of it, but if I, as you're talking about the journey of the first steps, right, to going to school, so on and so forth, if I go back into memory lane, every single quote unquote expulsion from the state of comfort and accommodation, if you will, right? When we go from what we know to the unknown of the next cycle of our lives,
Mhm.
on a personal journey, there was never fear. The more you spoke, the more I could think about, like, no, there's always this sense of excitement, this sense of something else to uncover, something else to become the pioneer in your life, right? So I think you started this by referencing reincarnation, and I love it because reincarnation, it brings us the sense of you get to learn through lessons of an existence, just like the child that falls, right, before it can walk. The first attempt at standing up, there's this a number of huge learnings in this body of ours that is so such an amazing machine. But all of the things that happens, there's lessons to be learned. And likewise, if you can extrapolate that each step that we take into an existence as a human being, right, we start to learn more and shape or further refine our destiny. So I love that idea of how the concept of reincarnation can help us all understand that we're giving from the amazing love and mercy from our Creator, our Father. We're given the repeated opportunities to self correct, right? And as we self correct, so it's us with us about ourselves, we also grow spiritually through this existence and the next and beyond. So I love it. Maybe if you want to, I don't know if it plays well, but maybe can we talk about how does free will contribute to this ongoing journey of learning and correcting and becoming self-aware or more self-aware with our failings? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just to add up to what I was saying before, in the same
Mhm,
way that when it comes the time for us to attend
mhm,
school, our parents will, even
mhm.
force us to go to school if that is the case. You
Yeah.
know, it's not because of something bad that we did. It's not in the case of Adam and Eve, just the disobedience. It is
Mhm.
the time for you to go and experience things on your own, to toil on your own,
Yeah.
right? And that will mean that there
Mhm.
will be experience that will be very pleasant, and others
Yes.
not necessarily. And and the thing is, when we talk about free will and the possibility of reincarnation, I think it's so important for us to have and to understand those concepts. I truly
Mhm.
don't know how, how I could go through life without that,
Yeah.
without knowing that I have responsibility, that I'm not a puppet in someone's game or the creator's game, or I'm just I had this creation, I had this push to now it's time you're ready for the next stage of the game,
Mhm. Mhm.
game, but of life, because here is where you are going to be growing, where you are going to have this self consciousness, where you are going to be having the opportunity to harmonize, consciously speaking, ego and
Mhm.
self. Because
Yes.
so far, while I were in the Garden of Eden, I wasn't even unaware of that.
Mhm.
Now
Mhm.
I have the opportunity of, moving out, going into the world, and according to my choices,
Mhm.
I will be having a response.
Yeah.
So I choose A, there will be a proper answer for the A or for the B or for the C. And I'm going to be the one that will judge whether I like the ABC better than,
Uh-huh.
the other, and I'm going to repeat or not those experience. Sometimes yes, because we are still in the process of growing, and we are still very much misguided by our own ego, right?
That's right. And as such, right, very naive, very there is a that again that back to that innocence
Hmm.
driven by ego to get out, right? And become who we think we are, our personality that is created with many different personas that we get it, but it's still a very naive process until we can become truly mature. Those are my thoughts, Josada. That journey, that initial ego-driven journey, like the baby, right? So self-centered, but we don't look at the baby and go like, as the baby's crying, oh, stop crying, you self-centered being. No, it is there because that's exactly the time that the baby needs to be taken care of, and for survival, it is what he or she needs before it can become to take care of himself, herself, right?
Yes, and in this process of, free will, of choices and
Yeah,
learning through the process, of course, many times we are going to choose wrong
yeah,
because we are going to be um, more prone to listen to the voice of, the ego, to
hmm,
the limelights and all of that, that is the illusions that surround us, and we will not be paying that much attention to the purpose that we are here, and the purpose is to grow, but it's
yeah,
from part of our growing. And there is one part that I like very much when Joana de Angelis addresses this topic,
yeah,
in tune with Carl Gustav Jung, where he talks about the process of individuation and how this process means also suffering. And, it's removing the layers that are unnecessary for us, that we don't need in this journey.
yeah, yeah,
Actually, uh, make a bridge in this gap between ego and self, where one is not going to be annihilating the other, but it is
yeah.
going to be in sync, where we
Hmm.
have to deal with the abyss.
Yes,
So you
yes.
think about the
Hmm.
bridge. I have one side the ego, the other side the self, and we have to, to work together. And there is this abyss that we call the shadow. And I
Yeah,
think I like it very much the way Joana de Angelis presents it, because she says in all this process of independence, of growing in this personal development, of self-discovery, of transformation, there is
hmm,
no way we can go through that without looking at the abyss,
hmm,
without uh, being aware that,
hmm,
yes, there is, this shadow, these negative traits, these things that we are trying to bury,
yeah,
not to, because they will make us feel, like you say, shameful,
yes,
and hurt, and we want to hide this side of us. But this is where she comes in. She says there is need for the integration of the shadow. We
yeah,
have to embrace the shadow. I have to know what my weak links are, and how
yeah,
can overcome them. And there comes choice, there comes
hmm,
free will, there comes new opportunities for new life, for new reincarnation. Because come on, we cannot do all of that in just one. And I'm so glad. I mean, one of the most wonderful things I think about, when I think about, is being immortal, right?
yes,
But
hmm,
sometimes we will feel more this, immortality from the um, being a very imperfect being, right?
hmm,
I don't think I like it, but we have to look at it from the perspective that I'm constantly growing and
yes,
constantly learning and having more possibility in this journey to come.
hmm,
So, depending on how we choose, right,
yeah.
the free will, we can tell for sure that the next incarnation is always going to be better.
Yes. So just to recap, so we can all go back to what you mentioned here, which is so important, right? This process of awakening of our own consciousness starts with this recognition of our duality, light and shadow in this case, but also their very closely match the idea of ego and self. And uh, those sense of polarities within ourselves, they really show us that our psychological journey toward maturity is again moving from that innocence, the age of innocence or unconsciousness, to self-awareness. And that's when, as you mentioned, Josada, talking about shadow work, or simply put, in other words, to push us to confront the parts of ourselves that we've repressed or denied, most likely because of guilt or shame or things that we don't accept based on our egoic construct. So for me, Josada, that integration, the work that we do to integrate our shadow is really essential for our transformation, because it is exactly, and it's quite uncomfortable, by the way, but it's exactly doing that that will allow us to start to embrace the full spectrum of who we are, right? So, fears, anxieties, worries, all of our flaws, all of the unresolved aspects of who we are. And the integration, I believe, really leads us to a sense of balance, right? We're becoming from this duality into one, um, wholesome, balanced being. And at the same time, it is quite interesting because away from that sense of innocence or naivete from a spiritual perspective, now we become much more authentic and much more self aware and conscious, which is all in all a much better version of who we are. So I love what you're saying, that the need to confront the deep, right? Because it's quite deeply buried sometimes. Those parts of ourselves that we don't want anybody to see, we don't even want ourselves to see, but the process that requires so much courage is one that may feel like it's fraught with missteps, fraught with sense of failure, right? Oh, I can't believe I'm being this. But that's when we start to exercise self love, self forgiveness, and embracing all that we are as a whole.
Yeah, you see, when again talking about Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
uh, when the with this movement outside of being expelled, so to say, from the Garden
Hmm.
of Eden, they recognize this shame and
Yeah.
vulnerability that they had, which exactly represents this shadow rising into consciousness.
Correct.
Just past week, a friend of mine called me. She needed to
Hmm.
talk to me, and actually, she wanted to confide in me because I believe this is something that happened with all of us that are trying to become better people. And
Hmm.
especially in this field of spirituality, of,
Hmm.
acquiring new values. So there will come a time that we will have to find in ourselves and to leave contradictions, and
Yeah.
that's what was happening to her. She was telling me and narrating to me about an experience that she had, that she
Hmm.
had to confront this shadow side. And she said, listen, I don't know why I reacted this way. I don't think this way. I don't want to be this person.
Uh huh.
Oh, and I was so surprised with my reaction. And at the same time, she was beating up herself
Yeah.
because how could she, with all the knowledge and understanding and trying to become a better person, still
Yeah.
feel the way she was feeling. And it was,
Correct.
and I said, you know what? I was just reading this chapter, the book of Joanna de Angelis,
Uh
and
huh.
she's the one that is going to give you the answer, because she's talking about the integration of the shadow. And what does this mean? It means there is no point in us just trying to beat up ourselves. It's just going to put you down. uh,
Yes.
we have to be, the self-awareness cannot, and transformation and inner transformation cannot help
Yeah.
unless we reconcile this thought in our mind that yes, there are many um, shadowy traits that we
Yeah.
still carry within
Yeah.
ourselves. We are learning, sometimes not as much as we feel this way, but society taught us. Before, let's say, society wouldn't care if a nobleman would just kill a peasant.
Yes. Sarah, it's absolutely right. Yeah.
If you saw that, it would
Mhm.
be absolutely normal. But now, of course, just by saying it out loud, it makes me feel nauseated, because how come? It's a human being.
Mhm.
It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the economical position you're in. So we carry within ourselves so many of those values that we have learned. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the right way to proceed. But now the ways are changing, and we have to change, but we don't change overnight. And this is the suffering, because old habits die hard, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the process. So the suffering here of this discovery of ourselves, it's actually working in our favor. It's not a punishment. It's
Yeah.
to make us become each time more aware
Yeah.
of what we are and what should be the new ways in accordance with his spiritual values.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to maybe, for a little bit more academic here, Jussara, but maybe spend a few minutes talking. How does, for example, this myth, this story, right, of Adam and Eve, relates or is seen from a religious or from a psychological, basically a Jungian uh, understanding of the myth, and how spiritism does in questions such as that we find in the Adam and Eve, right? Self-discovery, individuation, or even spiritual evolution. Do you have any ways to explain to me and to everyone here today how do they compare between those three perspectives? Is there
Yes,
anything that you could maybe bring to us?
we have some concepts that we could be analyzing uh,
Mm-hmm.
this perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
in the case of primordial state, for instance, in the biblical narrative, we have like the existence of Eden, the unconscious unity with God, no
Mm-hmm.
knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Jung, Jung would go and say about the self, this
Mhm,
that exists in this state of unconsciousness, and how
mhm,
we have the potential to go to
mhm,
grow. And in terms of spiritism, we talk about the spirit as being created, simple, and unenlightened, and have
mhm.
possibility of reincarnation. So the shame and awareness of nakedness, for instance, we can talk
Mhm,
about vulnerability that is recognized in terms
mhm,
biblical narrative. All of a sudden they became they had shame of who they were. And
mhm.
Jung, he talks about the anima and animus, which is very interesting, and
Yeah.
so personality and psychological conflicts that we may have. And in spiritism, as we go through those reincarnations, that we are going to be recognizing the imperfections that we have and the misdeeds we committed in the past. So there are, the
That's very interesting. Those how each the same concept, right, is seen differently, but they complement each other, right?
yes, like for instance, the shadow. So the
Mhm.
serpent represents the shadow, right? We
Oh, I love it.
don't
Uh-huh.
blaming the serpent, that
Uh-huh.
unknown being, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, there is
Uh-huh.
a serpent there that the serpent gave you the apple, but I cannot bite for you.
That's right.
So
That's
that
right.
is the
Yeah.
first sign of free will. When I got the apple and I knew this was a forbidden fruit, I knew it. I chose. That is the first moment where we see, the missing link, the growth, and the same thing for Adam. Uh,
Hmm.
Eve presented to him the same way that the serpent presented to him, but he was the one that would decide to bite and to
Yeah.
swallow the apple, right?
Yeah.
So, in Jung, we see that the shadows represent this unconscious aspect, this repressed instinct. So, we want,
Mhm.
like, this case that I was talking about, this friend, she wanted to repress that emotion. This is bad, stay
Mhm.
hidden. You're
Mhm.
not going to solve the problem if you do
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
have to recognize that there is something there. And in spiritual terms, the shadow can be all these karmic burdens, the past actions that we bring with us. And many times we say, oh, I cannot be responsible for the things I did in the past.
I love it. Yes, I love it. I always remember, and I'm trying to think of who's the painter, famous pre-Leonardo da Vinci, for example. He was Leonardo's master that he really admired. But in the Adam and Eve scene, it's Adam, well, God asking Adam, and he points the finger, right? And to Eve, and Eve points the finger to the apple, and the to the serpent, and the serpent points the finger to the apple. So it's this. Wasn't me. It wasn't me. But I love this. There is interesting aspects of the courage that it takes to say, I did it. Right, I did it, and that is, in so many people call it a shadow work, where I am willing to unburden, right? Everything that I have done, including from a free will perspective, all the bad choices, if we could judge them, all the choices that did not go so well, because they are my choices. And as a shadow says, those are the things that I may have filtered, right? Through this persona that I am today. But because it is me, by repressing those parts of myself, I am actually living in conflict with who I truly am. Right?
And an interesting thing is that it's even contradictory from
Mhm.
the religious perspective when we
Yeah.
say that God created everything perfect, like God is perfect. Uh,
Mhm.
why would He created a fruit that would it would be a forbidden fruit? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a question. And just to for us to wrap up here, there is
Uh,
one point in this whole story and
mhm.
comparison that we can make between this three aspects of Jung and
Mhm. Mhm.
spirituality and the biblical aspect that is
Yeah.
the return to the Father,
Mhm.
the return to God, to the divine essence. So, from biblical aspect, the journey would be, to transcend the suffering, return to divine unity, but in a conscious way.
Mhm.
Jung would say is when you reach this fully individuated self.
Mhm.
So it's like you return, but in wholeness and plenitude, right? Integrating ego, shadow, and the archetypes. And the
Mhm.
spirit, from the spiritual perspective that reunites with God through a spiritual evolution, reaching this noumenal state. But the thing is,
Beautiful.
never to return the way you were, but
Mhm.
now a perfect being, which is different because not before you where this fetus, you didn't know anything. Now you go through life or through lives, and you have time to adjust, to learn, to um, integrate yourself in a way that you reach this state of wholeness and become whole in God as well. So you do not return to any place because this is a state of mind, it's not a
Mhm.
physical place. So the
Mhm.
Garden of Eden is not a physical place.
Correct.
The start
Mhm.
point of the spirit's journey into this process of individuation.
Oh, beautiful, beautifully said. Unfortunately, we are at the end of our time together. So maybe if I try to restate all the really great nuggets of knowledge that you provided to all of us here, Jussara, I would say that the journey of self discovery and transformation. Um, as exemplified in the myth of Adam and Eve, they do mirror, they express our own path of individuation as per Carl Gustav Jung, right? And from a spiritual perspective, it's all about our spiritual growth as spirits, immortal spirits. So the idea here is that when we face our inner struggles, we are able to embrace the integration of our shadows. And as a result, we're able to learn from all the challenges that life presents to us, all the things that gives us gray hair and all the wrinkles, right, as we grow old. It's just really each challenge that we face, we overcome, we transcend the prior state, that comfort, the place of comfort that we were before, and we become, there's an expulsion to the next, from one paradise to the next. But it is that path that makes us move toward greater and greater self-awareness. And I love the concept of realignment with the divine. So when we evolve, we contribute now no longer in the egoic, self-centered, childlike, naive, innocent being that we were, but we start to contribute to this collective transformation of society, right? We demonstrate that the changes that must be attained begins within each step. So I know that Jesus, for example, as a being of light, he was able to transcend suffering. He was able to balance his ego and his self, right? And he ultimately was able to create this amazing ripple effect that led to a much more compassionate and harmonious world. All we have to do is look before and after Jesus. But all of those questions are questions that we should think to ourselves: how can I, in my own very personal, very individual journey, can do the same? How can I look at each thing that comes toward me as a challenge, or my own self doubts, my self questions? How can I use them to be able to embrace and learn and forgive if necessary? But Josada, because at the time, I just want to say to all of you, thank you for being here. And for all of you who are there, thank you, especially if this was the first time that you're here with us today. Please note that the Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna De Angelis. And we do hope that you're able to, I don't know, expand your own concepts, both spiritual concept as well as a psychological concepts to understand and look, and in this case, look at this biblical passage and start to compare them from different lenses. I want to say thank you all, but especially I want to thank our sponsors, Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spirits Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil, the Brazilian arm of the Medical Spiritist Association. We'll be back next week with another episode. And I just want to say thank you for being here with us. So long, everyone.
Bye, everyone.